you don't mind, I let him.
So I'll make a motion to amend Resolution 2018-103, replacing its entirety and with the text, the Council of the Town of Phillipsburg authorizes the mayor to negotiate with the Phillipsburg Housing Authority to create an interlocal agreement providing Section 8 management services to the Phillipsburg Housing Authority by the Town of Phillipsburg.
Motion, is there a second? Councilman, have you discussed this?
If there's a second,
I apologize.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second that for questioning.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So in terms of debate, the only discussion I had with Mr. Rummerfield was my closing question to his testimony to council when he came last week. If you recall, while this was his desire to have it executed as written currently in 2018-103, he noted that if it wasn't a successful resolution, he also had the option of creating an interlocal agreement with either the county or with the state. And I asked Mr. Rummerfield if it was possible to do an interlocal agreement with the town as well, to which he replied yes. I still have my concerns regarding the PVV and the possible long-term implications, and as well as the additional red tape that Mr. Rummerfield noted when he came in to give his testimony. If you recall, he said that this resolution doesn't even necessitate that the Section 8 will go to the Housing Authority. It's requesting the state and in Washington, D.C. to approve the transfer. I think the interlocal agreement reduces that red tape and allows us to keep the decision-making internally, as well as resolving the concerns that we heard from both sides of the conversation in terms of the shifting the responsibilities, as well as removing uncertainty for those who are concerned about the uncertainty. So that's also why I made the resolution general, because I think it gives both the mayor and the housing authority flexibility to create the interlocal agreement to the terms that are required to execute the PVB and allow the housing authority to have the capital flexibility they need to move the housing authority into the future.
Who has the power just trying to think a second. Who has the power to give the okay to give it to the housing authority? Will it be the council or will it be? When the time comes.
I believe Mr. Roberfield said that would come from the feds.
Yeah, so under the proposal that we have before us, we remove that uncertainty and the possible drag out of time. Last time I checked on the waiting list, Phillipsburg was approaching the top in terms of the RAD consideration. I think this is probably, again, the best proposal that we have to satisfy parties on both sides of the request, as well as removing the uncertainty and red tape that we could possibly deal with the federal government. And again, this is a proposal that's open-ended. They'll be able to execute an agreement as will be reviewed by both attorneys to make sure that it's fair for both sides in terms of who has what to say, and it'll come back before us for final execution. So this isn't, again, similar to the current text in front of you. It's not a final decision. It'll just allow the mayor to discuss with Mr. Rummerfield how we can affect that change. And again, Mr. Rummerfield did indicate that he could execute an interlocal agreement to achieve the same end. So I think that in terms of, if the goal is to allow the PHA to enter into the RAD program with PPP, this achieves that end.
Council President, if I may.
Mayor, yes, I was actually going to I had a question for you, but I'll let you go ahead first.
I sat with Mr. Rummerfield today and started this discussion. There are some problems. One of the problems that exists is our current coordinator of Section 8 is a municipal employee. She gets paid out of municipal monies. And we have to figure out how to, how can I say that, reallocate federal monies to cover her salary, number one. Number two, there is a $150,000 pilot that the Housing Authority pays the town of Phillipsburg on an annual basis. We're going to have to compensate that in our budget. And I do believe it's doable, but it's going to take some negotiation. And I will keep the council, up to date on any types of agreements between Mr. Rummerfield and myself.
So if we vote yes, you're saying we lose 150,000 in the pilot?
Mr. Rummerfield was not sure about that, because once the Section 8 goes over to the Housing Authority, it changes from Section 9 to Section 8. And I'm not sure if Section 8 can receive the $150,000 pilot. But as I said, I will keep the council apprised of every issue that comes up. We cannot afford to lose that $150,000 pilot.
All right, Council Vice President, you had a comment with regard to the 150,000?
We checked that before the last meeting, and I didn't think that was the case. It was determined it should actually go up based on the property valuation increasing.
It would go up and down. It would fluctuate.
It would fluctuate based on the property value, and
Right.
better homes will increase it.
Right, Councilwoman, but he was not sure how it would be facilitated with Section 9 versus Section 8. But let me call him tomorrow and try to get back to council with a definitive answer.
He's right here if you want to ask him.
Paul, could you answer that
Mr.
question?
Rummerfield, can you approach the podium, please?
I think what the mayor's talking about is the $150,000 that's the pilot, payment in lieu of taxes.
From the Housing Authority.
That's correct. And that's gone up steadily because of cost-saving measures at the Housing Authority. The 150,000 pilot's not automatic. When I first started, it was about 85,000. We've continued to go up over the last 2 years. It's roughly 150. That's under the Section 9 public housing, when the town entered into a annual contract contribution with the federal government. As part of that, the contract said that the Housing Authority, it's a mathematical formula, that the Housing Authority will pay the town of Phillipsburg a pilot, payment in lieu of taxes, annually. If the Housing Authority switches from a Section 9 program to a Section 8 program, the pilot provision is not in there because the annual contract contribution is null and void. The contract is over. But there has not, and the only reason we would switch to a Section 8 is if we get the RAD. If the Section 8 comes over to the town of Phillipsburg, we will continue to administer those 210 Section 8 units and continue to administer 580 public housing units, and the pilot will continue. If we're approved by RAD, which is a long-term process, I mean, we're talking about probably a year of physical needs assessment to determine what capital needs we need for the next 20 years. We have to do an energy audit. So there's a lot of things to do before we're actually approved for RAD. So if RAD comes over, the pilot is no longer in with the Section 8. But the federal government has not approved a RAD contract in any community that does not include a reimbursement to the town. It may not be called a pilot, it's not a stipend, but there is not a RAD contract that's been approved by HUD that the Housing Authority or the RAD people do not contribute to the town of Phillipsburg. So while it's not a pilot, you can bet that the Housing Authority is not going to walk away from the commitment to Phillipsburg or any other town in terms of some type of contribution.
Thank you.
Mr. Rummerfield, I just have a question because we had a landlord up here earlier with regard to his tenants. Would there be any change for those tenants under the program if we were to transfer the Section 8 program to the Housing Authority?
He should get his check on time. He should know that we're going to come in and do inspections. We're going to do quality control inspections if he runs a good operation, because it is a business. There shouldn't be any change. One of the things I'm concerned, I really want to get into a lot of specifics, but it was brought up tonight. This is part and parcel why I think that the Section 8 program should be sent to the Housing Authority, strictly for more oversight. One of the council people tonight asked about an audit for the library and an audit for Section 8. If you're sitting up there and telling me you don't have the Section 8 audit, shame on someone, because that's a town department. Library is totally different. That's set up by state statute, and they have their own board. So you may not have that one. But if you haven't reviewed the Section 8 audit, shame on someone. So I think that's part and parcel why the Section 8 program should come over, so there is more oversight.
Mr. Romerfield, thank you. Does anybody else on the panel have questions for Mr. Romerfield?
Yeah, speaking of the question that we have before us, if I recall correctly, we did have at one point last year the proposal for a interlocal agreement, and we have the question before us now. Would the interlocal agreement be workable in terms of the RAD application, in terms of applying for it?
I think when you talked about an interlocal service agreement, the question that was asked last week is, can you do it? The short answer was yes.
Okay.
I think what I heard tonight, you stating that if we do enter into a interlocal service agreement, that the Section 8 can continue at City Hall, will continue over here, that absolutely will not work out.
Okay.
If an interlocal service agreement were doable, it would have to be under one roof. We can't operate the program at two different locations. I think what I think is proper is you ask the feds, first in Newark, to consider the transfer. If they say yes and Washington says yes, then I think we could sit down and talk some specifics in terms of keeping the town involvement, if that's what you want. But I think the thing to do is ask them, so there's no questions about it. Because as the councilman said, he's concerned that 210 units will not be administered as well as they are right now. Well, let's put the shoe on the other foot. And if you do the interlocal service agreement, how are the 580 units going to be managed? If the person conducting the 210 is doing that now and is in charge under an interlocal service agreement. So I think there's a lot of questions that have to be asked. I think the first thing to do is get it down, request HUD to consider the transfer, and then go from there.
In what solution would you see an interlocal agreement be workable? What would the format be if it was?
I think we'd have to see if the program comes over to the Housing Authority first. This happened about 5 years ago. It passed Newark, and Washington was a little confused, thought we were creating another housing authority. So I think you let it go through the motions at the federal level and then go from there.
Certainly don't know.
Just to reiterate, so when we said that it is a workable solution, in the short answer, what would
I didn't say it's workable. I said it's an option
Right.
to do it there. But
what would the actual result look like that would be feasible?
I think we'd have to take over the program, lock, stock, and barrel, under our.
And just for clarification, what would the benefit of doing it through an interlocal agreement then, as opposed to? So I just, because typically with an interlocal agreement, there's a sharing of resources, but it doesn't sound like that would be the case in this agreement.
That was your suggestion. I don't know of the benefit.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have questions for Mr. Romerfield?
Your Council President.
Yes.
Mr. Romerfield, you might have answered this before with me, but we have a large attendance tonight. The number 580, approximately 600. Is there a chance under the RAD program for that number to increase?
No. We're looking at decreasing it. If we're approved for RAD, we intend to request HUD for a demo disposition. We'd actually like to reduce some of the public housing in Phillipsburg.
And I know you couldn't get too much into detail about that because of the current residents, and understood. Thank you for your answer.
Councilman Lutz, did you have something?
No, nothing.
Okay.
I'm going to say it again, I'm not for this. We as town fathers have sorry. We have town fathers. Have the rule over Section 8 right now, of 210 employees, or families. I think it's up to 192, if I'm not mistaken, last week. I feel that if we would go to this, like everybody says, it can't change, it can't change, it can't change. But you know, in today's world, anything can change. Anything can change, and that's all we need is more of that type of housing in the town of Phillipsburg. I'm not going to vote for it. That's how I feel. So just so you know.
Thank you, Councilman Woods. Hey,
You know what?
guys, listen. I want to keep this strict decorum, please.
Council President, did you hear what he said?
Unfortunately, I did not. What I would ask, though, is that you refrain from comments from, okay? With all due respect, with all due respect.
Oh,
I-
no respect, he has no respect. Everybody knows it.
Ma'am.
See what this guy's doing to me up here?
All right,
While I'm
listen.
sitting here doing not a damn thing?
No, all right, listen.
Constantly
This is the last time.
There's a whole council.
With all due respect, there are children here in the audience, so I'm going to ask everyone for the very last time, the next outburst from anyone in the audience, I will have you removed. There are children here, so please. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
You're welcome.
So, Councilor, I believe the question for the council was.
Thank you, I was lost.
Yeah, to 2018-103.
And we had the discussion, so this would be the vote this would be the vote.
Approve
to amend.
as amended.
Yes.
Shared service.
To approve as a shared service. Is there, so this would be the vote. So you would say yes if you'd like a shared service, no if you don't. That's right. Thank you. Roll call?
Councilman Lutz?
No.
Councilman Davis?
Yes.
Council Vice President DeGirolamo? No. Councilman McVeigh?
No.
Council President Holbrook?
I would have voted yes for a shared service agreement. It will fail 3-2. So we now have a resolution on the floor transferring the town of Phillipsburg, transferring Section 8 using the Phillipsburg Housing Authority to Phillipsburg Housing Authority. So, motion?
Discussion?
Okay, we need a motion.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded?
I did not move.
I did. I just asked for a motion.
I'll move.
Now I have a motion.
Second.
Now I have a second. Discussion.
Council President, I asked for extra time last week on this because this was probably one of the bigger decisions I had since I'm sitting up here. And albeit I can say with all certainty, I'm not 100% in favor of the decision I'm going to make compared to zero. I am satisfied enough by listening to subject matter experts, by listening to my fellow councilmen and women, that internally I am built, the way my mind works is, I don't think for the moment, I think long range and long term and what it can do. I've seen Phillipsburg under the current system, and I also have seen what the RAD can do in certain towns and cities that it's been implemented in. Albeit this is not a RAD discussion, where this actually is the step towards it, which, but I do believe with Councilman Lutz wholeheartedly that anything can change. I just happen to think, in my opinion, anything can change in the favor. Again, this is probably one of the hardest decisions I have, but I don't think personally, I think sitting up here, I think professionally. I have to use my head on this one, and what I currently have seen in this town for a long number of years. I am satisfied, and I like the answer of the 580 not increasing, decreasing, and the demo destruction of some current properties and putting up some other properties that would be a little less of an eyesore. So with that being said, I am going to vote when it is my turn to vote. I am going to vote yes to move this forward. Thank you, Council.
You're welcome. I think you should apologize to Mr. Overfield for calling this building an eyesore.
This building?
No, his building. I'm teasing. Okay, is there any further discussion? Councilman McVeigh has to say, Councilman Lutz, Vice President DiGirolamo, Councilman Davis.
No, I think there's too many questions still to answer about the future. I would have been in favor of a shared service agreement to facilitate the PBB application. But since I don't fully understand, I can't vote in favor. That's all.
Thank you, Councilman. So, roll call vote, Vicki.
Councilman Lutz? No. Councilman Davis?
No.
Council Vice President DeGirolamo?
Yes.
Councilman McVeigh?
Yes.
Council President Polper?
Yes. Resolution 2018-103, resolution of the Town of Phillipsburg transferring Section 8 using the Phillipsburg Housing Authority has been successfully passed. Resolution 2018-107, a resolution providing for appointments to the Ethics Committee. Do you have that as amended? Before we move, I would like to, Councilman Davis, you had a recommendation.
I believe that it would be appropriate to untable and then we could.
I'm sorry, we need to untable.
Yep.
Untable, motion to untable 2018-107.
Second.
Discussion. Okay, roll call vote.
Councilman
This
Lutz?
one-
Oh, wait,
Councilman Davis?
Oh, yes.
Councilman Davis?
Yes.
Council Vice President DeGirolamo?
Yes.
Councilman McVeigh?
Yes.
Council President Polper?
Yes. Councilman Davis, I apologize for opening up discussion. Okay, we now have Resolution 2018-107, resolution providing for appointments to the Ethics Committee successfully untabled. And I did speak with Councilman Davis, so I would like to open the floor first for him.
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to amend the resolution, replacing Randy Piazza Jr. With Pastor Slack and adding Stan Garrison to the list of appointees.
We actually can. I took a look at it. He can recuse himself. If it were one of the, he could recuse himself if it doesn't affect any, like, we don't affect him.
I thought it said no members of boards or towns.
Committees. So members of committees, members like the
Okay.
Board of Education. If it's okay, Councilman Davis, we have 2 vacant positions.
Yep.
I would like to fill those positions with Mr. Garrison and Mr. Slack, and that would give us a full board without the 2 alternates.
Well, I think we need a second, because I motioned, I don't think one second.
Sure.
So, and then he can amend my amendment. Or it can fail, one or the other.
If it fails, I'm just going to do everything but get rid of Randy.
Therefore, yeah, so if there's no objection, I'll withdraw the motion.
Is that okay? I don't want to argue. Okay, so then, Councilman, would you like to redo the amendment to just add those 2?
Yes, with the one caveat that in terms of the times of the slots, I would like to swap Pastor Slack and Mr. Piazza Jr. So in terms of the timing. So that's my motion.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's your motion.
yeah.
Do I have a second for Councilman Davis' motion? Okay, without a second, Councilman, I would like to replace them both at the same terms, both Pastor Slack and Stan Garrison. And then we would have a full committee without the 2 alternates. We do need, at one point in time, to propose 2 alternates.
And can we clarify, because I don't believe that's correct in the resolution, what the time frame for those 2 vacant positions is?
The 2 vacancies appears to be 1-year vacancies. That is my motion.
I will second.
Discussion.
So just to be clear, we're putting Bill Slack and Stan Garrison in the 2 vacant,
That is correct.
and they would expire at the end of this year.
Well, they would expire in 2019. I believe we made it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just typo. So it's a year term, yes. So,
So it would be December 31st, 2019, Council President?
yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I did have a motion and a second, with 0 discussion, so we can roll call.
Oh, sorry. I do have a slight discussion, but you've made a
Yeah.
motion, so I'll make sure you have a chance first.
No, that's okay.
I do think that Mr. Slack is deserving of longer term, as a long-term participant in the town, and someone who is clearly qualified to serve in this position. I am glad that we're adding him to the Ethics Committee. I also hope that the exercise in reviewing the resumes has shown what a difficulty it is to find candidates who are not conflicted in this appointment. I believe, how many, if you can recall for me, how many resumes did we have to completely discount because they had a conflict? It's quite a few.
We did have to discount quite a few, Councilman. Unfortunately, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head.
So as I said, I still believe that the jurisdiction for these concerns should be outside the local area, something that's been echoed in other matters. But I'm glad to adopt this list with those 2 esteemed gentlemen added to it.
Thank you, Councilman.
There's another cap. You don't have the 20 expiration.
Bill? No, we're good. There's no gap. Okay, so we have a motion, seconded with discussion, roll call.
Councilman Lutz?
No.
Councilman Davis?
Yes.
Council Vice President DeGirolamo?
Yes.
Councilman McVeigh?
Yes.
Council President Holbrook?
Yes, Resolution 2018-107, a resolution providing for appointments to the Ethics Committee have been successfully passed. At this time, I would like to turn it over to the mayor for his mayor and administrative reports. Mayor, do you have anything with you this evening?
I do. I have 2 reports. I attended a Rich Construction site plan meeting at Ingersoll Rand, and would be happy to report that they are moving very fast. Their preliminary site plan will be in July 5th. They intend to be in the ground in January sometime or sooner. I also met with the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Their mission is to ensure that the Opportunity Zone is a success, and they came offering low-interest loans for large and small businesses. That's all.
Mayor, that's good news. Okay, so just to clarify, Mayor, for my own notes, you said Bridge Construction, would they be breaking ground July 5th, or is that in January?
They haven't come before.
No, they will be breaking ground July 5th, once they get through the preliminary and final plan approvals.
And this is going to create a lot of jobs for our residents.
Well, it's 1,001,000 square feet of the 3 buildings that are being built in Phillipsburg. Each 1,000 square feet equals 1 employee, so
Thank
you
you.
got
Mayor.
about 1,000 employees.
I'm sure there's 1,000 people here in Phillipsburg that need jobs.
I'm sure.
That does help. Moving forward, we have public petitions. This is the time where the public is allowed to speak. What I would request is, if you come up to the podium, speak clearly, loudly, and state your name and address. And we do have is it 5-minute time limit? 30-minute max? You want to go 30 minutes? I wasn't talking.
Hello again. Sandra Morissette, 5 Fairview Heights. We know Phillipsburg has tried for years to redevelop the area along the Delaware River, but we are closer now than we've ever been. Mayor Ellis has been working with the state and investors, and Main Street is the focal point where people could spend their days discovering more about the town we love. But our town council has other plans. In the June 12th town council work session, the legal notice of which stated that action will be taken, town council passed the first reading of Ordinance 2018-10 to amend the riverfront redevelopment plan and permit storage of waste disposal containers and trucks in the zone. LMR Disposal is the beneficiary of this ordinance. Alpha, interestingly, refused LMR Disposal's expansion request, so LMR Disposal began operations here in violation of local zoning laws. Despite a zoning violation notice, cease and desist letters, and threat of court summons, Town Council asked that any violations be withheld from enforcement actions until LMR could proceed with the redevelopment study before the Planning Board. Neither LMR nor their lawyer came to the hearing they scheduled with the Planning Board, which unanimously rejected LMR's requested zoning variance and recommended Town Council do the same. You did not. Town Code Section 625-74A states, sound level should not exceed 65 decibels from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and 50 decibels from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. near residential areas. And sound level should not exceed 65 decibels near commercial areas. Yet the Federal Transit Administration has measured trucks at 88 decibels 50 feet from the source. Section 625-73 states a trucking business that hauls for hire is not permitted in Phillipsburg. Section 624-7A relates to excessive noise, a problem with Alpha, and they complained about this. Section 625-748 says there should be no emissions or odors detectable without instruments. Again, Alpha complained about the smell. LMR Disposal will also violate a regulation limiting trucks to no more than 4 round trips a day per business. Yet their attorney, Mr. Peck of Florio, Perucci, Steinhardt and Capelli, has stated 30 to 40 trucks will be entering and exiting the site per day. In Alpha, their operations began at 3 a.m. Town Council, thank you, did stipulate that the trucks and containers should be empty.